My name is Lydia, and at 36 years old, I had finally achieved the one thing I had worked for my entire adult life. I made partner at one of the top architectural firms in the country. It was a goal I had sacrificed for, working 80-hour weeks, missing holidays, and putting my personal life on hold for over a decade. The night of the awards dinner, I stood at the podium, ready to give my acceptance speech, and looked out at the table reserved for my family. It was empty. All of it. My husband, Ben, my parents, even my sister. None of them were there. Later, a single, devastating photo posted on my sister's social media would reveal where they had all gone instead. They thought my ambition was a flaw, a selfish pursuit that made me cold and distant. They didn't know that my ambition was fueled by a promise I had made to my dying father years ago, a promise that, once revealed, would expose the foundation of our family as a carefully constructed lie. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about the promise that changed everything, hit like and subscribe for more true stories about the hidden sacrifices we make for the ones we love. Before my world was defined by this one glaring act of betrayal, my life was a high-wire act of balancing ambition and family. I was an architect, a profession that demands not just creativity, but a relentless, soul-crushing amount of work. For 12 years, I had poured myself into my career at a prestigious Chicago firm, fueled by a passion for creating beautiful, functional spaces. My husband, Ben, was a musician, a talented guitarist who taught lessons and played gigs with his band. His life had a rhythm and a freedom that was the complete opposite of my structured, deadline-driven existence. We loved each other deeply, but our different worlds often felt like two tectonic plates grinding against each other. Our family dynamic was complicated, a quiet network of unspoken resentments. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, were retired teachers who had always valued stability and community over ambition. They were proud of my success in a detached, almost academic way, but they never truly understood it. My work was an abstraction to them, a series of late nights and missed family dinners. My younger sister, Chloe, was the family's heart. At 32, she was a stay-at-home mom to 3 beautiful children, married to a kind, steady man named Sam. Her life was a warm, chaotic whirlwind of school plays, soccer games, and homemade cupcakes. She was the one who organized the family holidays, the one who always remembered birthdays, the one who was physically present in a way I never could be. And my family, especially my mother, never let me forget it. Chloe is just so nurturing, my mother would say after I had to cancel a weekend visit for a work emergency. It's a gift to be so present for your family. The implication was always clear. I was not present. I was not nurturing. I was absent, a daughter and sister who chose blueprints over people. The push to make partner at my firm was the culmination of everything I had worked for. It was a grueling, year-long process, a competition against my own talented colleagues. It meant more travel, more weekends at the office, more nights sleeping on the couch in my studio. Ben tried to be supportive, but the strain was immense. "I feel like I'm living with a ghost," he said one night, after I came home at 2 a.m. for the 4th time that week. "I know," I whispered, too tired even to argue. "It's just for a little while longer. Once I make partner, things will change. I'll have more control over my schedule. We can finally take that trip to Italy." "Once I make partner" became my mantra, a promise of a future that would make the present sacrifices worthwhile. My family saw it differently. They saw my ambition as a choice I was making against them. The final partner selection was to be announced at the firm's annual awards dinner, a black tie affair at a downtown hotel. It was the most important night of my professional life. Weeks in advance, I had personally invited my parents, Chloe and her husband, and of course Ben. I wanted them there to see what all the sacrifice had been for, to share in the moment I had given up so much to achieve. They all promised they would be there. The day of the awards dinner, a strange sense of dread hung over me. I had spoken to Ben that morning, and he seemed distant, his congratulations feeling rehearsed. My mother called not to wish me luck, but to ask if I had remembered to send Chloe's youngest a birthday gift. It was a small thing, but it felt like a deliberate reminder of the family duties I was supposedly neglecting. I pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the evening ahead. I spent the afternoon getting ready, a rare indulgence. I had my hair and makeup done professionally. I put on a stunning deep blue evening gown I had bought for the occasion. As I looked in the mirror, I saw not just an architect, but a woman on the verge of realizing a dream she had held for over a decade. For a fleeting moment, I felt beautiful and powerful. I arrived to the hotel ballroom at 6:30. The room was buzzing with energy, filled with the most influential people in my industry. I found the table reserved for my firm and saw the place cards, my name, and next to it, 5 empty spots for my family. At 7 o'clock, the dinner began, and the seats were still empty. I started to text Ben, my fingers hovering over the screen, but I stopped. I would not beg for their presence. At 7:30, my boss, Mr. Harrison, leaned over. "Is your family running late?" he asked. "I suppose so," I said, forcing a smile. "Chicago traffic." At 8:15, the award ceremony began. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, and still the chairs remained empty. When they announced the new partners, my name was the last one called. And finally, a designer whose vision and dedication have reshaped our firm's approach to modern architecture, Lydia Carmichael. The room erupted in applause. My colleagues stood cheering. I walked to the stage in a daze, the sound of the applause a hollow echo in my ears. All I could see were those 5 empty chairs. I accepted the award, shook hands with the senior partners, and stepped up to the podium to give the speech I had practiced for weeks. I looked out at the sea of faces, found the empty table, and the words I had so carefully prepared evaporated from my mind. I managed to say a few words of thanks, my voice sounding distant and thin. I don't remember what I said. I walked back to my seat, the heavy crystal award feeling like a lead weight in my hands. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations from colleagues and clients. Everyone was celebrating my success, but the one group of people whose validation I craved, whose presence I had counted on, had abandoned me on the most important night of my life. I left the event early, the celebratory champagne tasting like ash in my mouth. In the cab on the way home, I finally let the tears fall. Silent tears of a hurt so deep it felt bottomless. It wasn't just that they had missed an event. It was a statement. It was a confirmation of what I had always feared, that in their eyes, my success would never be as important as Chloe's domesticity, that my ambition was an inconvenience they were no longer willing to tolerate. When I got home, the house was dark and empty. There was no note, no text, no missed call, just silence. I sat on our bed, still in my evening gown, the award on the nightstand beside me, a glittering symbol of my lonely triumph. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from social media. Chloe had just posted a new album. The title was Best Birthday Surprise Ever. My fingers trembling, I opened the album. The first photo was a group shot. There they were, my mother, my father, Chloe, her husband Sam, their children, and my husband Ben. They were all gathered in what was clearly a hospital room, smiling broadly around a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The caption read, "Surprise! Our little miracle, Delilah, decided to arrive a month early. So blessed to have the whole family here to welcome her into the world." The photo was time-stamped at 7:45 p.m., right in the middle of my awards dinner. They hadn't just missed my event, they had chosen to be somewhere else, together, celebrating a new life while completely ignoring the milestone I had just achieved. They hadn't even bothered to tell me. I scrolled through the other photos, each one a fresh stab to the heart. Ben holding the baby, beaming, my mother crying with joy, my father looking proud, a picture of them all, my husband included, raising plastic hospital cups in a toast. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a choice between two competing family events. This was a secret they had kept from me. A celebration they had deliberately excluded me from on a night that was supposed to be mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, the glow of the phone screen illuminating my tear-streaked face. A baby. A surprise baby. Chloe had been pregnant and hadn't told me. My family had known and kept it from me. The lie was staggering in its complexity and its cruelty. Why? Why would they hide something so monumental? The answer, when it settled, was as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. They hadn't wanted to distract me during the final push to make partner. Or, more likely, they hadn't wanted my stressful work life to cast a shadow on Chloe's joyful news. They had made a decision, as a family, that her life event was the priority and mine was secondary. They had decided that my absence from her surprise birth was less important than their absence from my long-planned triumph. I turned off my phone. I couldn't bear to see any more smiling photos, any more congratulatory comments from friends who had no idea of the drama playing up behind the scenes. I stripped off the beautiful blue gown, letting it fall in a heap on the floor. I washed the professional makeup from my face, scrubbing until my skin was raw. I wanted to erase every trace of the woman who had stood on that stage so proud and so alone. Ben came home around 3 a.m. He walked into the bedroom, his face a mixture of exhaustion and a dawning, guilty awareness. He saw me sitting in the armchair, my award on the floor beside me like a discarded toy. He saw the crumpled gown. He saw my face. "Liddy," he started, his voice soft. "Don't," I said, my own voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I saw the pictures." He had the grace to look ashamed. "Chloe went into labor yesterday afternoon. It was all very sudden. Your mom called and asked us all to come to the hospital. We tried to call you, but your phone went straight to voicemail." A lie. A clumsy, transparent lie. My phone had been on and in my purse the entire afternoon. "You didn't try to call me, Ben," I said. "And even if you had, you could have texted. You could have left a message. You could have done 1,000 things. What you did was make a choice. You chose to go and be with them, and you chose to keep me in the dark." We didn't want to stress you out right before your dinner, he protested. We knew how important it was to you. We were going to tell you right after. You didn't want to stress me out? I asked, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. So instead, you let me sit at a table with 5 empty chairs, feeling like the world's biggest fool, while my entire family, including my husband, was at a secret baby party? How was that less stressful? He had no answer. He just stood there, looking at me with pleading eyes. It all happened so fast, Liddy. The baby came and everyone was so happy, so emotional. We lost track of time. You lost track of time, I repeated, the words tasting like poison. For 7 hours, you lost track of time. For 7 hours, enough time to be there, to take pictures, to toast with plastic cups, but not enough time to send a single text message? I'm sorry, he whispered. I know it was wrong. I messed up. Yes, you did, I said. I stood up and walked to the closet, pulling out a suitcase. What are you doing? He asked, panic creeping into his voice. I'm going to a hotel, I said, and my movements were calm and methodical as I packed. I can't be here right now. I can't look at you right now. Lydia, don't do this, he begged, trying to take my arm. We can talk about this. We can, I agreed, pulling my arm away. But not tonight. Tonight, I need to be alone. I need to be in a place where I am not surrounded by the evidence of a life I have sacrificed everything for, only to find out it was a life you were all living without me anyway. I packed a bag, walked out the front door, and drove away without looking back. The silence in the car was a comfort. It was honest. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. For the first time in a very long time, I was completely on my own, and it felt less like an abandonment and more like a liberation. I spent the next 3 days in a sterile, anonymous hotel room, a world away from both my chaotic family and my demanding career. I turned off my phone, ignoring the hundreds of calls and texts that I knew were flooding in. I needed silence. I needed to think. The core of my pain wasn't just their absence at the dinner. It was the lie, the deliberate, collective decision to exclude me. It confirmed my deepest, darkest fear, that I was, to them, fundamentally outside the warm circle of our family. I was the provider of practical solutions, the high-achieving daughter they were proud of on paper, but I was not essential to their happiness. Chloe and her growing family were the heart, and I was just a distant, orbiting satellite. And Ben, his betrayal was the most profound. He was my partner. He was supposed to be my team. But when it came down to it, he had chosen the easy comfort of their family unit over the difficult task of supporting his ambitious wife. He had chosen to be liked by them more than he had chosen to honor me. The story I had been telling myself for years, that my sacrifices were for us, for our future, crumbled. I saw now that I had been running a race alone, cheering for myself, while my own team was in the stands watching a different game entirely. On the 3rd day, I knew what I had to do. The decision came to me not in a flash of anger, but in a quiet, devastating clarity. I wasn't just going to leave for a few days. I was going to leave for good. But before I could do that, there was one more thing I needed to understand. Why? Why had I pushed myself so relentlessly for a career they so clearly disdained? The answer was tangled up in the memory of my father, the real one. My father, Robert, had passed away from cancer when I was 19. The man my mother had married a few years later, Arthur, was my stepfather. He was a kind man,
but he was not my dad. My father had been an architect, too. He was brilliant, passionate, but he had never achieved the success he dreamed of. He had worked for a small, struggling firm, his innovative ideas always tempered by the firm's limited budget. I remember sitting with him in his hospital room during his final weeks. He was so thin and frail, a shadow of the vibrant man he had been. "I have so many regrets, Liddy," he had whispered, his voice raspy. "So many buildings I never got to design, so many ideas left on paper. Don't let that happen to you. You have the talent, you have the drive. Don't let anyone or anything hold you back. Promise me. Promise me you'll build something amazing." "I promise, Dad," I had sobbed, clutching his hand. That promise had become the driving force of my life. Making partner wasn't just a career goal, it was the fulfillment of a sacred vow. It was my way of honoring him, of finishing the work he never got to do. And my family, including the stepfather who bore his name, had treated that promise as an inconvenience. I checked out of the hotel. I drove not to my house, but to my office. It was a Saturday, and the building was quiet. I let myself into my new corner office, the one that came with the partnership. It was empty, waiting to be filled with my life. I sat at the large mahogany desk and wrote 3 letters. One to my mother and stepfather, one to Chloe, and one to Ben. Then I went to see my lawyer. The following Monday, my life changed forever. At 9 a.m., Ben Liz served with divorce papers at our home. At 9:15, a moving company, which I had hired, arrived to pack my personal belongings. At 10 a.m., I tendered my resignation from the firm. My boss was shocked. "But you just made partner," he said, his face a mask of confusion. "This is everything you've worked for." "No," I said, a strange sense of peace settling over me. "I've realized that I was working for the wrong things. I've achieved the goal. I've fulfilled my promise. Now it's time to build something for myself." I walked away from the career, from the marriage, from the family, from the entire life I had so painstakingly constructed. It was the most terrifying and the most liberating moment of my life. My letter to Ben was simple. I told him I loved him, but I could no longer be married to a man who did not see my dreams as his own. I wished him happiness. My letter to my family was more complex. I told them about the promise I had made to my dying father. I explained that my ambition wasn't a rejection of them, but an act of love and remembrance for him. I told them that their decision to exclude me from Chloe's birth on that night of all nights had shown me that we were living in fundamentally different worlds, with different values. I told them I needed to step away, to find my own path free from their expectations and their judgment. I ended by congratulating Chloe on her new baby and wishing them all well. It was not an angry letter. It was a letter of resignation from a role I never wanted, but had played for too long. The dutiful, apologetic, ambitious daughter.
The fallout was immediate and explosive. My family, who had been unable to contact me for days, was blindsided. My mother called 100 times, her messages shifting from furious to pleading. Chloe sent long, rambling texts accusing me of being cruel and dramatic, of ruining her postpartum period with my selfishness. Arthur, my stepfather, remained silent. Ben was heartbroken. He showed up at my new temporary apartment, which I had rented through a corporate housing service. He begged me to reconsider. "It was one mistake, Lydia," he pleaded, his eyes red-rimmed. "Don't throw away 12 years of marriage for one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake, Ben," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "It was the final straw. It was the moment I realized that you will always, always choose the path of least resistance, and being married to an ambitious woman is not that path.
You want a partner who fits neatly into your family's world. I can't be that person. I don't want to be. It was the hardest conversation of my life, but I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was the right decision. We had loved each other, but we wanted different lives. My ambition wasn't a phase, it was a fundamental part of who I was, a part he had only ever tolerated, never truly celebrated. I spent the next 6 months in a state of deliberate reinvention. I sold my share of the house to Ben. I used the money, along with my significant savings from years of overworking, to start my own boutique architectural firm. I named it Carmichael Design, using my father's name, my real name. I rented a small studio space in a creative, up-and-coming neighborhood. I hired 2 other talented young architects, both women who had also felt overlooked at larger firms. We decided to focus on what I loved most, creating sustainable, community-focused public spaces. Our first project was a pro bono design for a new playground in a low-income neighborhood. The work was challenging, the hours were long, but it was different. This was mine. Every decision, every success, every failure was my own. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just building. The quiet from my family was a balm. Without their constant, low-grade disapproval, I felt lighter, more creative. My relationship with my work changed. It was no longer a weapon or a shield. It was just a joyful expression of my talent. About 8 months after I left, I received a package in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a small, worn, leather-bound book. It was my father's old sketchbook, the one that he had always carried with him. I opened it and my breath caught in my throat. The pages were filled with his beautiful, intricate drawings, designs for buildings that were never built, sketches of fantastical cities, notes on architectural theory. Tucked in the last page was a letter. It was from Arthur, my stepfather. "Lydia," it began, "your mother and I found this while we were cleaning out the attic. I thought you should have it. I have been doing a lot of thinking since you left. About your father. About the promise you made. I want you to know that I understand now. I was never trying to compete with his memory. I just never thought I could live up to it. It was easier to encourage the life I understood, Chloe's, than the one that reminded me of the brilliant man I could never be. What you have done, building your own firm, is what he would have wanted. He would have been so proud of you. I am proud of you. I know I have no right to say that, but it is true. I am sorry we failed you on your big night. There is no excuse. We were so caught up in the joy of a new life, we forgot to celebrate the one you had worked so hard to build. I hope one day you might find it in your heart to forgive an old man for his foolishness. Yours, Arthur." I held the letter to my chest, and for the first time since the awards night, I cried. But these were not tears of hurt or anger. They were tears of release. Someone had finally understood. Someone had finally seen me.
2 years have passed. My firm, Carmichael Design, has become a small but respected name in the world of sustainable architecture. We've won awards for our community projects. I have found a rhythm in my life that feels authentic and joyful. I am not just an architect. I am a business owner, a mentor, and a creator of spaces that make a difference. My work is still demanding, but it nourishes me instead of depleting me. My divorce from Ben was finalized a year ago. It was amicable, filled with a quiet sadness for what we had lost, but also a mutual recognition that we were better apart. He is still playing with his band, and I hear he is happy. I wish him well. My relationship with my family remains a work in progress. After Arthur's letter, I reached out. We started slow, with coffee. He told me about how my departure had forced a reckoning within the family. My mother and Chloe were in therapy together, working through their codependent relationship. Chloe had started taking online classes, rediscovering an old passion for botany. She was, for the first time, building something of her own. I have seen Chloe and my mother a few times. The conversations are still awkward, the history a palpable presence between us. The apologies have been offered and accepted, but the trust is something that will take years to rebuild, if ever. I have met my new niece, Delilah, a beautiful, bright little girl. I hope that for her, the family dynamic will be different, that she will be allowed to be whoever she wants to be without being cast in a predetermined role. I don't know what the future holds for our family. Maybe we will find our way back to a new kind of closeness, one built on honesty and mutual respect. Or maybe we will remain at a careful, loving distance. I have learned to be okay with that uncertainty. My worth is no longer tied to their approval. The promise I made to my father has been fulfilled. I did build something amazing, but the biggest thing I built wasn't a building or a company. It was a life, my own, crafted from the rubble of my old one. I learned that sometimes you have to tear everything down to the foundations to build something that is true and strong and meant to last. I had to lose my family to find myself, and in finding myself, I have begun, slowly, to find my way back to them, but this time on my own terms. Have you ever had to make a drastic change to be true to yourself, even if it meant disappointing your family? What did you learn from walking away? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more stories about the difficult and beautiful journey of becoming who you are meant to be. Remember that you have the right to be the main character in your own story. Thank you for listening.